Hello, everyone. Kind of have a variety of things to talk about today, from sort of international competition, TF2 as an internationally enjoyed game, to regional rivalries and kind of the history there, as well as talking about the sort of modern era and if those international rivalries are more of a thing of the past. So yeah, I guess no better way to get started than to establish that yes, TF2 is an internationally enjoyed game, and it is no different for the competitive side of things. Sixes is played all over the world. The primary leagues are, of course, North America with RGL, ETF2L in Europe, and OzFortress in Australia is probably the third largest, I'd imagine. Asia Fortress is close, but you have scenes in South America, Brazil, Middle East, all over the world, basically. You can find TF2 being played and being enjoyed, which is really cool. And there are definitely differences in how the game is played, both metagame-wise and actual config-wise. Of course, North America somewhat recently introduced the progressive rule set, the banny config, whatever you want to call it, where rather than a hard limit of the game ending when the server time ends, instead it goes into overtime, so the team with the lead kind of needs to close out, so to speak, score that last round. What have you. And I believe Australia actually adopted this as well. Europe, however, has not. And Europe always had a reputation of being, I shouldn't say always had, but for many years has had a reputation of being a particularly slow play style. And more than willing to park the bus. And this is something that it's a reputation that has grown in a major part because of certain international LAN appearances. I know Seven was the primary European team for quite some time, and they've definitely had many a slow game at international LAN, which made Europe in general kind of the butt of a lot of mockery, but just jokes and whatnot about kind of the pace that they play at. In comparison, North Americans would pride themselves on playing a much faster TF2, although in some cases a little less precise. But in comparison, actually, Australian TF2 is even faster and even looser at times, which is interesting. But yeah, you have the game being played in different forms all across the globe. And that's quite interesting. And this has always bred rivalry, particularly between the top two contenders being North America and Europe. For as long as Sixes has been played, these two regions have kind of, been vying for the number one spot, or there's always been talk about who's better. You have the classic copy pasta from Banny of, I apologize for my ego. Please forgive me. I'm just European. And trash talk back and forth is really easy to do online because Europe and North America don't play against each other. Regions, generally speaking, are pretty isolated, with exceptions like, you have, I'm sure, players playing between OzFortress and Asia Fortress, or North and South America to some extent. But cross-continental competition doesn't really happen online. You have players here and there who might play a season in another region and put up with the ping, but that is what you're doing. You're putting up with pretty bad ping, and especially if you're going in the 150 ping range, the quality of your own gameplay is going to go down drastically. And from my experience as well, in my opinion, the enjoyment of the game goes down a lot when you're in that high level of ping. And because of that sort of ping advantage, even when a team decides to play in, for example, an online tournament for another region, not a ton of weight is placed on it as far as the rivalry is concerned, because, yeah, like who cares if you beat us? Like you had the ping advantage or something. Like, right? You get the point. But rivalries kind of always existed, but it definitely has progressed, I'll say, because historically a primary driver, honestly, of the rivalry in not at this point, not really recent years, but the big North American contender has always been Froyotech, being led by Banny, and Banny very much leaned into this international rivalry. He was more than happy to trash talk Europeans and say that they're bad at the game, and talk about how North America is way better, as a proxy in part for him saying Froyotech is better. And to be honest, at least recently, has kind of backed it up. And again, recent being pretty relative, because there hasn't been international competition in quite some time now, at least at an international LAN. I believe the most recent tournament where North American European teams played together at a LAN would have been Insomnia 69, which Freo did end up winning. And North America, at least like in the latter end of things there, we're winning more often than not, which definitely led credence to the region's dominance, I suppose. But it was always just kind of Banny. But anyway, the point I'm making as far as this history is concerned is you have a very outspoken player making all these claims about this region being the best, that being Banny, talking about North America. And that's, of course, going to fuel the rivalry. And on the other hand, I mean, you have Europeans who don't like this behavior, and very much want to beat him, even if they don't really otherwise care one way or the other. So you have a pretty strong rivalry between these two regions. So it's a big deal when the European teams match up against the American teams at these LANs, and they turn out to be very exciting games, generally speaking. But that being said, there hasn't been a large international LAN in quite a while. I know the last North American international LAN was Rewind 2, and this was back in 2017, maybe? I don't recall exactly, but we saw not only a European team, but Australian teams there as well. And it was one of the most exciting LANs that I watched, and I still remember it all these years later. So it was sick to see. But this is where I ask if this rivalry even exists anymore, because there's a few factors at play that have kind of changed things. In no small part, one of them being kind of the recent dominance of North America, at least from my biased North American opinion, almost makes it seem like it's a little settled at this point, right? But another one being that Froyotech arguably aren't the top dogs anymore, which is a crazy thing to think about. But in pretty much all, like the past couple years at this point, Froyo, of course, have been winning seasons, have been winning pretty regularly here and there, but I wouldn't say consistently, because they've pretty much been winning if, like a G6, haven't been there. That's the major difference. At the LANs where G6 shows up, they win. In the seasons where G6 are playing, they tend to win. So it kind of seems like Banny and Froyotech are now the second place team, depending on what the competition looks like. And that's, in and of itself, obviously, huge and sort of a paradigm shift of North American TF2, but that also has implications for kind of international competition, because A, how do European teams fare against a different team besides just Froyotech? And B, how invested are people even in a rivalry when you don't have, such outspoken players sort of fueling it on from the North American side? Because no one on G6 is really going that hard going so strong to bat for the US or North America in general as Banny did. which is a little disappointing, I suppose, because it's just fun having these rivalries, right? It's something to talk about. It's fun when different regions have a level of trash talk, and it makes matchups more interesting when international LANs actually happen, which hasn't really been the case anymore, unfortunately. Yeah, that's kind of a brief history lesson and sort of talk about what the future of regional competition and regional rivalry might look like, because it really has been between North America and Europe. OzFortress have been kind of a perpetual, like, man, at Rewind, I don't even know if they got, it may have been 4th place, but yeah, definitely not in like the top contenders for competition, but play some very fun TF2, cool to watch. But yeah, you might be asking, why am I talking about these regional competitions, these regional rivalries rather, international LANs, all of that, when we haven't seen an international LAN in a proper sense, especially not in North America, since back in Rewind 2, which I, again, believe is 2017. Which now, man, 8 years ago? It's insane. So who cares, right? Well, there is actually an international LAN happening in Denver at the end of this spring. I believe late May 2025, which is incredible, right? For sure, I will be there, and I believe participating as a caster or something. I'll have some level of participation, so if you're interested in checking it out, I will have a link for like the announcement and stuff like that in the description. I do highly recommend like actually going even as a spectator, because again, this is an event we haven't seen in so long. But upon hearing this, it's such an expensive endeavor to actually have an international LAN happen, and I suppose that warrants its own kind of little discussion here, because there's a lot of factors that cause international LANs to be rare, because the big one being travel expenses. It's so difficult to actually travel across continents in order to participate, meaning that not only do you need the scheduling to line up, because there's been plenty of times where European teams might have the means to travel or the desire to, but the scheduling just isn't lined up, and you might actually make the criticism that scheduling is being too it's not accommodating them enough, in fact. But on top of that, like, when this is an expensive thing, and when there's just barriers to being able to participate in a LAN internationally, then it's like, okay, well, what actually drives this LAN to be the important one, right? Because post-COVID, there have been a handful of North American LANs at this point. And why would any one or the other be international or not, right? Like, what makes this one special? And I don't have a good answer for that, to be honest, but I can tell you that this upcoming LAN is going to have an Australian team and a European team for sure. Witness Gaming, I believe, is they're the European participants. And that's really, really exciting. So upon hearing this, I actually offered to help with the fundraising, right? I may as well expose my audience to their, I think it's going to be a GoFundMe, just to cover the travel expenses. Because again, international LANs, as I've hopefully made clear, are such an exciting time for TF2 and to be a TF2 fan that I know of players who, or not even players, I know of, people who are adjacent to the TF2 community, but not really like sweats, not really even participants in the scene at that level, just kind of like maybe casual players, maybe, very loosely connected to sixes, whatever, you get my point. Even players like that, I know, like, talk about and remember Rewind 2, for example. And events like that can be so fun. And yeah, the point I'm making here is I am eager to, help out Witness and make at least an effort to share it with you guys and help support in at least some fashion, right? The Australian team, actually, I don't remember what I forget the name of the Australian team attending, but they met their GoFundMe pretty early. They've already met their goal at this point, so that's fantastic. And yeah, I figure I just throw that out there. I don't think I actually have ever asked anything of my audience. Yeah, I don't even ask you guys to subscribe, even though I'm pretty sure that actually works. But yeah, definitely check that out if you are able, if you are interested, and check out the event itself. I will leave a link to the announcement. I'll leave a link to the GoFundMe, as well as you can donate to the prize pool of the tournament itself if you're interested. But definitely just consider it. It's going to be so cool this year to see a true international LAN happen again. I've had so many videos talking about kind of modern TF2 and how exciting Sixes is nowadays, and even before hearing the announcement of this LAN, I made a video about kind of the optimistic future of the game. I don't know, it's such a cool scene. As you can watch any of my videos and hear me just rant and rave about. So yeah, if you are able to support Witness Gaming and their travel expenses, I would be much appreciative. And yeah, that's kind of all I have to talk about. Keep an eye out for those dates if you are interested in watching as well, because again, LANs are where some of the best TF2 is played and some of the most exciting matches get played. And international LANs are even better in that respect. So anyway, that's, I think, all I have to talk about today. So yeah, check that out. And yeah, hope you all enjoyed. And I think that's all. I'll see you guys later.